Welcome, everyone, to Eikon. Hey, my name's Dan, and I'm the lead pastor here, and I just want to say it's an honor that I get to come up here and talk to you guys this morning, that you joined us here for Easter Sunday morning. And here's the thing, we've been putting a lot of thought into today. We've been preparing for this for a long time. We knew people were going to be bringing their kids and families, so we wanted to provide inflatables and a petting zoo, and we need to have plenty of things for you to do, be able to get family pictures. And we really thought through kind of every element of this. And as we were getting ready for Easter Sunday and thinking about this, we realized something about Easter Sunday morning, and we realized that today's also April 1st. And all of a sudden it struck us, and I was like, I was bracing myself for the churches around the nation that would be saying, hey, Jesus died, April Fools, and that would be like the big hook of the message. Well, I don't want you to worry. That's not where we're going to be taking it today. It's not like a big April Fool's joke today. But we wanted to dive in. We did give some thought to today and the direction we wanted to take with the message. And I'm going to be taking it in a direction that at first, you just got to bear with me, might seem like kind of a odd direction to go. And I want you guys, if you're new, if you're guests here, to kind of know where we're going to be going today and know what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to be talking about a few things. First, we're going to be talking about walking through walls, like you do. Somebody cheered for that. Yeah, absolutely. Walking through walls. Sure, why not? We're also going to be talking about a pastor who lost his faith in God. It's going to be a little awkward. And then we're going to talk about Kintsugi. I'm sure all of you are like, yes, Kintsugi. Of course, we're going to be talking about that at Easter. So here's what I want to do. Now, obviously, today is Resurrection Sunday. This is the day that we celebrate Jesus resurrecting from the dead. So we're also going to talk a little bit about that. I thought it's good at church to talk about Jesus. That's probably a good place to start. And really what Resurrection Sunday is, it's the day that we recognize, like I said, Jesus raising from the dead. You see, it was a couple days ago on Good Friday that we remember the death of Jesus, that Jesus was nailed through his hands and his feet to a cross, that he was pierced in the side by a Roman soldier's spear, and that he died and he was laid to rest in a tomb. But you see, what happened a few days later on Resurrection Sunday, he rose from the dead. And after he raises from the dead, the first person that he goes and he reveals himself to is some women. Because, come on, ladies, women, you're the future, right? Come on, that's, right? So he goes to the ladies and he tells them, and then they start telling people, and some of the disciples, the guys, they're dummies, they're like guys today, they're not believing the ladies, and they're like, I don't know, they're not buying it. And you see, they're also a little scared. You see, because the Roman Empire crucified Jesus at the request of the religious people of that day, and these followers of Jesus, they're his friends. So they're thinking right now, man, if they came for Jesus, are we next? Am I next? Is Rome going to be coming for me? Are the religious leaders, are they going to single me out next? So they're gathered together Sunday evening, and they're speaking in hushed tones, and they're in a house, and they've locked the doors, and I want you to look at what happens next. One of Jesus' followers, a guy by the name of John, records this, and he writes, that Sunday evening, the disciples were meeting behind locked doors because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders. Suddenly, Jesus was standing there among them. Peace be with you, he said. Now, here's the thing. If you've gone to church for a while, if this story isn't new to you, it's really easy to glaze past that and go, oh yeah, Jesus appeared and he said, peace be with you. But I want you to put yourselves in their shoes. Okay? Put yourself in the shoes of the disciples, and you're terrified for your life. And you're huddling, and maybe you have a candle lit or the fire's going, and you're whispering, what are we going to do? They came for Jesus, and what now? And all of a sudden, Jesus is there, and peace be with you. I don't know about you, but I would be terrified, right? I'm picturing the disciples. And here's the thing. I'm kind of reading into this. This is like Dan's translation. But I want to believe that Jesus did that on purpose, right? He was just kind of messing with them a little bit. I mean, sure, Jesus could have knocked on the door. He could have spoke to their hearts and had them come open the door for them. But no, Jesus just pops into the room all of a sudden, peace be with you. And I think after that, he followed up with I can change thou pants now. This would have been terrifying, right? And they're freaked out, and they're scared right then and there. But this shows us something interesting about the resurrected Jesus. And this is what I want to look at today. You see, Jesus, he's resurrected from the dead, and somehow he can walk through walls. He can appear in places that he wasn't in before. It's almost as if his body kind of has this immaterial quality about it. But that's not just it. You see, in other places, it tells that Jesus would sit down and would eat with the disciples. It's almost like Jesus is kind of showing off like what's possible. In a couple other places, he appears to someone and he somehow changes his appearance so that they don't recognize him at first. With Mary Magdalene, he appears as a gardener and she doesn't realize who he is until later. At another place, he appears along two men walking down a road having a conversation about what took place the weekend before with Jesus' death. And he appears alongside them and they don't recognize it's him. In fact, they invite him in, they have dinner, they spend all this entire day with him, and it's not till the very end that they realize and they recognize that it's Jesus, and we read that he just disappears. You see, there's these interesting qualities about Jesus, but here's the thing. If you're a skeptic in this room, like maybe you came with family or friends, you were bribed with lunch afterwards, your kids came dragging you for the petting zoo or the inflatables, and you hear this and you're going, I don't know if I buy it. Like, Dan, I hear what you're saying here, but like Jesus appearing places, and that's for you Christians, but I doubt that really happened. And if that's you, you're actually in good company. Probably more than you realize. I get it. I understand those doubts and those questions. And in fact, some of the disciples were just like you. They were saying, listen, we don't buy it. In fact, there was one disciple that wasn't there on this first account. And the disciples, they tell him about it. And he says, listen, I don't believe it. I don't believe what you guys are saying. You see, it's also recorded by John. It says this, they told him, we've seen the Lord. But he replied, I won't believe it unless I see the nail wounds in his hands. Put my fingers into them and place my hand into the wound in his side. See, this is a guy by the name of Thomas. And for centuries, I feel like he's kind of gotten this undeserved bad rap. He's called Doubting Thomas. This guy that doesn't believe that Jesus is or was who he claimed to be. You see, I think he gets a bad rap because I understand his doubt. I get that. And what's awesome, what I love, is that the compilers of the Bible, those that recorded these stories, these interactions, they kept this in here. You know, they didn't have to put this story in there. In fact, it would have been a whole lot easier to say, hey, let's leave that part out. I don't know, if I'm Thomas, I'm like, hey guys, you know that thing about me doubting? Can we just leave that part out? Can we just we'll just forget about that, kind of glaze over that? But that's left in there. So if you're someone that's doubted before, that's kind of questioned about this, you're in good company. And here's what actually happens with Thomas. This is what happens a few days later. 8 days later, the disciples were together again. And this time, Thomas was with them. The doors were locked, but suddenly, as before, Jesus was standing among them, saying, peace be with you, he said. Again, I imagine Jesus just pops into the room. I picture Peter, he's known for being a bit of a hothead, going, oh, Jesus, my Lord and Savior. Man, could you really not do that? Come on, just knock. We'll let you in next time, right? And here's what happens next. Then he focused his attention on Thomas. Take your finger and examine my hands. Take your hand and stick it into my side. Don't be unbelieving. Believe. See, I love this, that he invites Thomas into this, but there's something peculiar that we should take note of here. We've got Jesus that can walk through walls, right? We've got Jesus that can appear and seem to disappear. We've got Jesus that can change his appearance somehow. And yet, Jesus still has scars. Isn't that interesting? Think about the fact, and why would they put this in here? Why would Jesus still bear the scars of his crucifixion after his resurrection? That's interesting. Which brings me to the next part of our topic today, and that's a pastor that lost his faith in God. You see, I know this pastor that lost his faith in God. He was a pastor, he'd gone to Bible school, and he'd studied the scriptures, he'd memorized the Bible, he learned the culture and context of the Bible, and learned some of the languages of the Bible. But under the weight of ministry and under the weight of his own questions and his own doubts, he lost that faith in God. Now here's what makes it even trickier, is because this pastor was actually pastoring a church when he lost his faith in God. Awkward, right? That'd be a little weird, right? I mean, a pastor standing up on stage preaching about God, but yet doubting the very God he's preaching about. You see, he knew enough that he could keep doing that. He could keep kind of going through the motions and saying the right things while on the inside, he struggled with his own doubt and his own unbelief. In fact, this pastor didn't even tell his wife, didn't tell anyone about all the doubt that was going on in his own life. Because he knew if people found out what their response might be, what people might say about that pastor, what might that mean for his family, for his job, for his livelihood. So he just kept up those pretenses. Though on the inside, he was much like Thomas, doubting that Jesus was who he claimed to be, doubting that God existed. See, the reason I know this to be true, the reason I can tell you that story is because I'm that pastor. And about 2 years ago, if this was my faith, about 2 years ago, my faith broke. And I didn't know what to do. Because I had this job and I had to stand up here every Sunday and I had to preach about God, but yet on the inside, my own faith had fallen apart. I doubted the existence of the God I preached about. For the longest time, I didn't even tell my wife. I didn't tell anyone because the shame that I felt, the guilt that I felt, I knew that no one could see this mess. I couldn't let anyone know the doubts that I had. I couldn't let anyone know of the faith that I once had that fell apart. I couldn't let anyone in on the inside. I knew I had to hide this somehow. I had to sweep it under the rug. I had to play the game. And here's the thing. I grew up in church. I went to Bible school. I know all the right answers. I know how to fake it till I make it. But 2 years ago, my faith, my belief in God just started falling apart. Finally, I'll never forget the night I talked and I told my wife. I let in a close friend on some of the doubts I was having and some of the things that I was feeling, but I can't articulate the amount of shame that I felt. I can't articulate how much of a fraud and a phony I felt standing on this stage pretending and preaching about a God I doubted existed. I struggled preaching about the nature of a God that I questioned myself. I found myself going through the motions. Now here's the thing, I don't tell you this to wallow in my doubt. This message isn't just a message about doubting God. And actually, funny enough, next week you heard him talk about, we're actually doing a series called Confessions of a Pastor. And it just so happens that the first week we'll be talking about is saying, I doubt God. Surprise! Won't be a bunch of a big news flash next week. We'll talk more about that next week. I'll talk about the specifics of it. But as I was wrestling through this, I realized some things as they pertain to what we're talking about today. See, when we ask that question, why did Jesus still have those scars? We can find out something about the nature of God when we look at how he responded to Thomas. See, this is something that I clung on to as I wrestled with my doubt, as I wrestled with my questions, as I looked at Jesus and how he responded to Thomas, and Thomas has gotten a bad rap. But because I looked at what Jesus did and how Jesus responded, Jesus didn't reject Thomas. Jesus didn't say, Thomas, I can't believe you. How would you ever doubt me? He didn't say, Thomas, get out of here. You don't belong here. You're not one of my followers. No. He invited Thomas in. When Thomas had his doubts, when he said, I gotta put my hand in his side, Jesus said, go for it. See, the thing about Jesus and the thing about Thomas is Thomas actually needed Jesus' scars. Thomas needed to see that for himself. See, the reason I'm talking about this today isn't to focus on doubt. I don't know where you are today. I don't know what your story is. Maybe you're like me. You're like Thomas. You doubt God. You're here and you're like, I don't know if I even believe in that whole thing. Or maybe for you, it's something different. Maybe for you, you've made mistakes in your past and you try to do the same thing I did. You try to sweep it under the rug and cover it up so that nobody can see. There are these secret sins that you battle with, these things, and you try to put it together. You try to find a way for it to make sense. You say, nobody can know what's going on. Nobody can know about these broken pieces in my life. You're spinning your wheels and you're struggling. See, we've got to get honest with ourselves first. See, when we look at Jesus, we look at the scars that he bore. See, many times when we look at our own mistakes, our own brokenness, the thing about Jesus is the scars on his body weren't a sign of his defeat. They were a sign of his victory. That Jesus was able to overcome death. That he overcame the broken things in his life. That there was resurrection life. See, but for us, we can look at that and we go, that's great for Jesus, but I can't let anybody know about my stuff. Jesus, that's great. I'm glad that you're able to help Thomas. I'm glad Thomas needed that, but I can't let anybody see the broken parts of my life. Maybe it's something that was done to you that you've never spoken of. You never tell anyone about because no one can know. Maybe it's not as dramatic as that. Maybe for you, you're ashamed of where you're at in life, that you feel like you should be at a different place. You had dreams and hopes and desires for your job to take you somewhere else, and you realize you feel like you're on a dead-end track and you're so ashamed. Maybe for you, it's your marriage. You want it to be different. You had hoped and dreamed when you said I do across from the other person, you had this ideal that you thought it was going to be. In an honest moment, it's not there. You walk through doors like that and you smile. You shake each other's hands. All the while, no one knows about the brokenness in your life. See, the first step, the first thing you've got to do is you have to become willing to be seen. See, my first step was to quit hiding, was to quit faking it, was to quit pretending, and just to be honest. This is where I'm at. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I still don't know. You see, I can say this now on the other side of that doubt. You see, I've stepped in, and like Thomas, I've reached into the side of Jesus, and my faith has been rebuilt and is being rebuilt on the person of Jesus. I'm looking at his life for the cues of how to live my life. See, but my first step was a step into the spotlight. Another step for me is to stand before you today. And all the shame I feel and all the mind games that I have, what are people going to think? What are the awkward conversations that are going to take place after this? Who's going to leave the church because of this? But if by this, in the same way that Jesus needed it, or Thomas needed Jesus' scars, maybe today you needed to see my scars. Maybe today you needed to know that this pastor, I'm not perfect. If you place me on some pedestal thinking I'm perfect, I will fall off. I did fall off. And I want you to see that I've got scars too. See, that first step is gut-wrenching. That first step into the light is terrifying. But the first step will always be a step to become known.
Started singing worship when I was 13 years old. My mom actually made me lead because she was a pastor and we didn't have anybody to lead worship. And she's like, you're just going to do this because this is what God called you to do. and I did it, because I'm 13, I have to be obedient. And I led worship at church, and little did I know that was just something that was going to kind of define me. People would know me by saying, hey, you're Arlene, you're the worship leader from Living Word Church. And I just got sick of it. I'm like, no, I'm not the worship leader from this church. I'm Arlene. There's a lot of moments where I felt as though what I was feeling, I wasn't allowed to feel, or I wasn't allowed to show. I knew how to fake it. I knew how to appear that I was connected to God, but I was never really, really connected. It's like, is it okay to not really be feeling this right now? And because I didn't have an answer and I didn't have somebody that I could turn to ask those questions to, I kind of sunk into this dark mind game that I had with myself, and it's like, no, Arlene, you're not allowed to feel like this. You're not allowed to feel depressed. Why do you feel depressed? You're worshiping, you're not allowed to feel that way when you're worshiping. To be honest, I just felt like I was being so fake, and I realized that the less authentic I became, the more depressed and the more depression I sunk into. The more depressed I became, the more suicidal I became, and I tried to look up ideas on how to do it quickly and how to just leave with the least amount of pain. And one day I just woke up and I said, you know what, I just need to leave. These thoughts are just consuming my mind. They're making me become this person that I know that I was not destined to be. And so I decided to like pack up my bags and move to Texas, where I only knew one person. I knew my best friend. I remember I left my job, I left my family, I left ministry. I decided that I wasn't gonna go to church. I wasn't gonna go to church. I wasn't going to look for one. I wasn't gonna get plugged in. I didn't wanna do anything that had to do with ministry. I was driving home one day from work and I saw this sign of Eikon Church right in front of this building, literally in the entrance of my neighborhood. And I laughed. I remember saying, God, you're funny. Like, you're so funny. I'm running away from something and you're like, hey, look, I'm not even gonna make you look for it. It's like literally standing right there. And I just started going to Eikon and I started healing, which I think is really important. I started healing these wounds that I didn't even know I had. Through all this, through this whole journey that I've gone through this big old mess that I created for myself, like me showing it to other people has helped other people heal. And it's amazing how God uses you in your most messiest moment. God uses you in your darkest place, your darkest moment, the moment where you think you have nothing to offer. That is the moment that God uses your story, uses your moment to heal somebody else. God loves to use the unqualified. He makes them qualified. I am the most unqualified person you will ever meet, but God qualifies me, and that's what's important. You know, I'm bruised, but I'm brave, and this is me.
To the dark, hide away, they say, 'cause they don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the sharpest words want to cut you down, I'm gonna send a flood, I'm gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come, and I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen, I make no apologies. This is me. Another round of bullets hits my skin. Well, fire away, 'cause today I won't let the shame sink in. We are bursting through the barricades and reaching for the sun. We are warriors. Yeah, that's what we've become. I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the sharp words want to cut me down, I'm gonna send a flood, I'm gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come, and I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be
Yeah. I love that. I love getting to see Arlene's story. See, what gives that power is knowing where she came from. See, that song is one thing on its own, but it's another when you know the backstory. See, when you know the pain that someone's walked through, it makes the victory that much sweeter, doesn't it? But here's the thing about that. The thing about the beauty of that is you first have to step into the light. You've got to admit where you're broken to be able to experience resurrection life. Which brings me to our last idea today, Kintsugi. See, Kintsugi is this ancient Japanese art form. It takes pottery, broken pottery, and it pieces it back together, and it blends it back together with gold, silver, and platinum. See, it's looking at the brokenness of a piece and not seeing it the way the world sees it. It's seeing an opportunity for beauty in the midst of it. It's saying, you know what, this is a broken piece, but we're not going to throw it away because there can be new life. And in fact, we believe that the new life is actually greater than the life that was there before. See, in Kintsugi, it takes brokenness and it finds beauty in it. And for me, it first means standing up here and admitting that I, your pastor, lost faith in God. But the thing is that I believe on the other side of that, as Jesus invited me into that, that the new life is better than the old life. You see, and I don't know about you, but I'm done faking like I'm fine. I'm done pretending like I'm not broken. I'm done putting on the mask and pretending to be someone I'm not. See, we've got to step out into the light first. And what was true of Jesus is true for you. See, your scars aren't a sign of your defeat. They're a sign of your victory. That thing didn't take you out. That the thing that knocked you down didn't knock you out of the fight. There is new life. And on Easter, we celebrate that resurrection. It's His resurrection is our hope. That's what we look to. And if Jesus can do it for Thomas, if Jesus can do it for a messed up pastor, if Jesus can do it for Arlene, He can do it for you too. But we gotta quit playing the games. We've gotta quit pretending like we're not broken. We've gotta step into the light first. We've got to invite Jesus into that mess. You see, for me, I found out that I couldn't put it together on my own. Every attempt fell apart. It was the person of Jesus. It was His life. It was the resurrection I saw in Him. Can I be honest? I don't really care. I'm going to be. I still don't have it all figured out. I still have questions. You know, where I've landed, I might be wrong. But when I look at Jesus and how He responded to Thomas, when I look at Thomas's life after that experience, I think I'm going to be okay. See, Thomas, that guy that got a bad rap, doubting Thomas, of all the disciples, he actually took, according to church history, the gospel, the good news of the gospel, further than anyone else. See, church history tells us that Thomas took the good news all the way to India, that he took it further than anyone else. So I believe he knew what it was like to fall further than anyone else. So whatever your story is, maybe you doubt God too. Maybe for you, you've made mistakes in your past that you don't want anyone to know about. That shame, that guilt that you feel, I get it. More than you know. The fears of what will people think, what will happen afterwards, I get it. Can I just say, there's nothing better than living in the light. just being honest with who you are, with inviting Jesus into those broken places. So I'm going to ask you to do something that might be a little scary. In a moment, not right now, in a moment, I'm going to count to 3. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if this is your story. If you have broken places in your life that maybe not a soul knows about. Maybe it's something that happened to you. Maybe it's something you've done. Maybe it's shame you feel about a certain situation. Whatever it is, wherever you're at in this place, there's brokenness and maybe nobody knows. Will you just, in a moment, will you admit that? In fact, in a moment, I'm going to raise my own hand because that was my story. For far too long, I stood up here and I wasn't honest with you. I wasn't honest with the people in my life about what I was going through. And I think that journey would have been a whole lot healthier, but a lot easier if I would have invited people in sooner. And I want to ask you to join me in saying, yeah, there are things in my life that are messed up too. There's brokenness in my life too. The other thing that you're doing is you're confessing in front of me and you're confessing in front of the other people around you. Because I'm not asking you to close your head and close your eyes and bow your head. Because I didn't. Arlene didn't. We're just going to be honest with each other. That's me. And maybe you're in this room and you're not a follower of Jesus. And for you, you know you've had brokenness and you've been trying to fix it on your own and you're done. And you're saying, if that's who Jesus is, if that's who Jesus really is, because who I thought Jesus was is I thought he was somebody who was going to be mad at my doubt, mad at my mistakes, come down to condemn me. That he came into this world to condemn me and tell me how bad I was. But if you're saying that Jesus is different than that, if you're saying that Jesus will take this mess I've made of my life just as I am, then I'll give that Jesus a shot. I don't know what it means. But I want to invite Jesus into that broken place in me too. So you're in this room right now, and in a moment you may raise your hand. You're like, well, I am a Christian though, Dan. I want people to know, like, I believe in Jesus. Listen, I don't care. Why do you care? So maybe there's just broken stuff in your life that you've been trying to hide and not let people know. Or maybe you're saying, I want to invite Jesus into those broken places. Either way, the count of 3. Would you join me in just admitting that that's you? 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Right? Once you've raised it, you can put it down. Can we be a church that's done with faking it? Can we be a gathering of people that are honest with who we are and where we're at? Can we quit pretending like we're not broken? Can we quit putting up a picture in front of the reality and saying, oh, this is who I am. No, things are good. God, I'm blessed, brother. Listen, we are all broken. Through Jesus, we're being built into something beautiful. When we get honest with ourselves and we invite Jesus in, he can do what we never thought was possible. I didn't know what my future would look like. I'm so glad that God is rebuilding that future for me. And we as a church, we're going to commit to being a church full of broken people being rebuilt, right? We're going to be the kind of people that follow Jesus' lead. When we watch Jesus rush to the margins to care for the least of these, we're going to be right behind him, aren't we? When Jesus isn't condemning people because of what they've done or what they believe or don't believe, but he's loving them and embracing them and welcoming them in, we are going to do the same. That is who Jesus is, and that is who we want to be. Amen?